Let's all join together and pray. Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be pleasing in your sight. For you are our rock. You are our Redeemer. Amen. I've gotten to read a lot of books about culture shaping and making big changes in life. But my favorite book by far is this one. It's called Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. I'm showing it to you because it's going to be in my office on a shelf over there if you ever want to borrow it to read through this book. It's really, really good. Now, every book that is about big changes in life and making big changes, there's a whole lot of crossover, a whole lot of similarities in each book. But here's why this is my favorite of the culture shaping changes books. Because this one talks about elephants. It's really awesome. They have a great image that will stick with your mind, hopefully, and you can't get it out ever. You can think about making a change like trying to get this massive creature to do something new. There's three big parts, the way that they structure making a change in this book. First, you need a rider or like a director on top of the elephant who's up there, who knows where to go, who sees clearly from way up high. And that's that rational side of us, this good thinking side of us. He steers and he guides and he wants the elephant to keep going down the road. And if you want to make a change, you have to have that rider on top pointing down the right path. Then, second, you get the big, massive elephant itself. Powerful, strong, and if you've ever been around elephants, probably pretty stubborn too. If you want change to happen, you have to make the elephant want to move. Because if the elephant doesn't feel like doing it, sorry, nothing's happening. This you can think of as like the feeling side of a change. Not just the head knowledge, but like inner motivation inside, knowing this change should happen, but then feeling this is the right decision, this is the right way to go, and then you just kind of go. And finally, their picture with the rider on top, guiding with the motivation of the elephant, deciding I actually want to move. Finally, the last thing is the path in front of the elephant. Because if it is this thick jungle with prickly vines that are going to poke and are going to hurt, that elephant's never going to go through there. But if you chop it all down, if you've got a clear path that is well worn and easy to see, the elephant is just going to go down that path. It's easy and obvious. This is the right way to go. The easier path is the one it's always going to take. Now, none of that is from the Bible at all. But working at making a change and thinking about what it takes to make a change, I think is really worthwhile for us to do as Christians. Especially for us as Christians, because God calls us to do outreach. Big theme, very obvious. Everyone. Outreach means every single one of us working at doing outreach in our lives. And here's a cool thing. Sometimes doing outreach means changes are going to happen so that doing outreach is the normal and expected thing for you in life. The part of the Bible that we read through, I think, is a very great description of a Christian's perspective on how to approach change in life. This, the guy who wrote it, this is the Apostle Paul, one of the most well-known missionaries of all of Christianity, who shared Jesus, who made traveling and telling people kind of like his main thing to do in life. He died for doing that in his life. Many of us as Christians really like to look up to him and think well of him and shape our lives after him. So when we read through a section like 1 Corinthians 9, it's so easy to read his words and just kind of nod along here and cheer and approve. That is awesome, Paul. You changed everything that you did. That's amazing. And we kind of go like this for him. But I think it's really worthwhile for us to think through the practical day-to-day effects that living that kind of life had on his real everyday life. Here's where he starts out this section. He says, wild. I have made myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. This is extreme, right? He willingly chose to serve other people, to put himself behind other people. And notice it's not just the good people or the nice people or the kind of interested people. He says to everyone, to all people. In what ways would that have shaped his perception of the people around him day to day? In what ways would that change the way those people looked at Paul and what he was doing? How many opportunities did this lead to for him to tell people about Jesus? It sounds like a lot because here's his description of doing this for everyone, all people around him. He says to the Jews, I became like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law, I became like one under the law. Though I myself, Paul says, am not under the law, he had Jesus, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law, like one not having the law, though he says, I'm not free from God's law, but I'm under Christ's law, so as to win those not having the law. To the weak, I became weak, so as to win the weak. I have become all things to all people. Huge coverall, way to go, Paul. But this meant change, probably every day of his life, depending on who was around him. Let's think it through group by group. If Paul wanted to win people who followed God's Old Testament laws, maybe Jewish people by blood, when he's around those people, he's going to follow those laws too. Which means when he's in Jerusalem, back in that area, offering the right sacrifices at the right time, because that's what you do. It would mean for them they had to have like this ceremonial cleanness kind of thing going on, and if he got unclean, he would wait weeks and weeks to become clean again before he would go near them in the temple again. It meant these big festivals, he would celebrate them. It meant so many things. If you know the Bible and you read through books like Leviticus or Deuteronomy, you know this list of laws for Old Testament people is not small. The ways that they lived Old Testament life meant changing what you did every moment of every day. And when Paul's around those kind of people, that's what he chooses to do too. What about the people that did not know God's Old Testament laws? So many people that he was going around in the ancient world reaching had no context of the Old Testament Bible, had no idea what those things were. Big surprise, he did not try to convince those people by using the Old Testament laws. They didn't know those things. They didn't understand those things. Instead, Paul changed. And he tried to show them that Christianity is not tied to outward obedience and ceremonies. It's a connection to Jesus and what Jesus did for you simply. For those people, he would model what a genuinely free life looks like when you're under Christ's guide. He showed them what it was like to serve people willingly and gladly, not because he had to, because that's what Christians do, even without the Old Testament laws. Many of the people that Paul came into contact were like really, really new Christians, very little understanding of the Bible, but they understood Jesus. So maybe you could say their faith didn't have like a deep knowledge depth behind them. So for those people, Paul was watching constantly to see if there might be something that would hurt their faith. He was going to be there to help them grow in their understanding, sometimes spending years at a time in a city, deepening people and giving them more of what God had said. Paul would never look down on people who just didn't know as much as he did or have the range of experience that he did connected to Jesus. No, he changed his ways to fit those new in faith people better. This kind of thinking and this kind of living for Paul really must have consumed his life. To these people, to everybody around him, Paul was always trying to do his best to get rid of anything that might come in between them and knowing Jesus. And this is what Christian service, especially for outreach, looks like. But I think you know there is a side of you and me, this sinful nature side, that doesn't want any of this, right? You can see how opposed to that change, the desire for change kind of life you are, when you just blurt out the right answer to someone's question about religion before you ever get to hear them or understand what they think. The hard thing is when you do that, you might have taken away the opportunity and their desire to actually share their views and their faith and gently show them Jesus. But instead, that side of you says, I need to be right. And so the right answer just comes out. Or how about the times you know people and how messy their lives are and how messy it is if you're connected with them, and on the outside you see the messiness and you know how messy your life is already, and you kind of convince yourself that no more messiness. I don't need that in my life. I can't deal with that. So you kind of separate yourself from them a little bit more. Or maybe like over all of this subconsciously, this autopilot thinking, you like the way you behave. You like the way you think. You like your expectations of doing life in this world. It comes really easy to put yourself and your thoughts and your ways of thinking first, because there's a side to you and to me that this is what it's all about. Me first is what your sinful nature wants. So how can Paul or any of us do what Jesus calls us to do, to serve, to put other people first? There's 3 words that Paul said that I think give a really awesome answer to this. I hope you caught it. Paul said, I am free. So much as Christians goes into these words for us. Free. First off, free from sin. Free from guilt. Free from all the things that weigh you down and want to push you down and make you feel like you shouldn't be connected to God. Christians, you're free from those things. In Jesus, those things are gone. But because of that, you are free to live for other people, free to put other people first. Freed from that sinful, self-centered side of you that wants me first kind of things, because when Jesus sets you free, he sets you free away from self-centered thinking and self-centered behaviors. This kind of freedom only comes from Christ. And how did Jesus set you free? He became like you and me, a real human being with real human experiences and emotions in this world. He really and truly sacrificed himself in your place on the cross. And by doing that, he gave you his holiness and set you free from those things. Jesus makes you free like he is free. Free from sin, free from shame, free from all those things, and then free to live in love for God and for other people. I think if you want to know what living free looks and feels like, then you got to think about Curious George. I really hope all of you know who Curious George is, right? Little monkey who lives with the man in the yellow hat. If you don't know, go to the library, check out books, dig deep into it. It's going to be really good because it's going to help you think outreach things. Now, it feels like Curious George, almost every episode on TV, almost every book, it feels like he should get a whole lot of criticism for the poor choices that he decides to make. And then the consequences you get to see because of those poor choices. A big theme of Curious George is this little monkey is going to get into trouble a whole lot of times. But I don't think that's the main thought that the author wants you to think about Curious George. He named him Curious George. That's the big thing. This little guy is so free from expectations, from previous experiences, that he lives every day and every moment looking at things from a fresh perspective. When he doesn't know what something means or what it does or what it's about, he gets curious and he plays around with it and he tries it. George is free in like the most freeing way possible, and it means he sees life in some amazing new ways. Christians, Jesus has made you free from all the awful things, from the sin and the guilt and the shame and empty way of life before this. Jesus sets you free from the things that you struggle with the most because you're forgiven and free and loved by God. because he did it for you, not depending on you and how good you're doing. He sets you free from all the mistakes. So what can you do with that freedom? You can be curious. You can listen carefully to people and their perspective on God and religion. You can work hard to understand their views a little bit better. You can be patient with a longtime friend and wait for the right opportunity. You know when it's right to share Jesus with them. You can be curious and try out new patterns of life, doing outreach a little bit more, like talking to strangers. Really, talk to strangers. Invite them here. Bring up Jesus with people who don't know him yet. Tell them how much Jesus shapes you and your life and how meaningful it is for you. You can start to love connecting with people so much that you put them and their ways first, and you earn the opportunity to share what you believe too. This is the kind of stuff that Paul did, and because of Jesus, you're free to do these things too. You're going to serve people by taking down these barriers to the gospel so that God can win people. You're going to work hard to get things through in a perspective and thinking way, trying to understand them. You're going to change what you can change. I do want to say this is not doctrine. This is not what God says. This is not Bible principles that are true for all people all time. Those things we don't change. Those are God's ways. But there are so many barriers that can be broken down simply by trying to think through other people and what they've gone through and what they think. And you're free to do that in Jesus. I think one of the strangest things about our American holiday tradition is that we work really, really hard at becoming something else for maybe like 1 or 2 hours a year. You take all the effort and thinking into finding like the perfect costume like the kids describe. Then you check yourself in the mirror to make sure it's looking right and nothing's missing in your costume. You take time to get ready and put on the makeup and put on the paint and get everything all set together. You do this for your kids, and you take like the hour that it takes to get them ready, and you go and you walk and you do trick-or-treating and you come back, and it's about an hour of life. And you wake up the next morning wondering, was that worth it? The effort and the time and the tiredness that came from all that, was it worth it to go through this process? Now, the clear answer might be no for you, and yet every year you're willing to do it again and again and again. Well, Christians connected to Jesus, set free by Jesus, that is never going to be the answer if you're wondering about putting somebody else before yourself, about changing what you can for their good. Because God says your service is worth it. It can break down barriers. It can create opportunities to give them comfort and hope. It can be the way that the Holy Spirit chooses to connect somebody to Jesus for eternity. Will it be easy? Will you blend in with the crowd? Will it wear you out and make you tired? Maybe. But know this for sure. If you're free and you make changes for that, God promises your service is always worth it. Amen.